So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! The Detroit Lions shocked the football world on Saturday afternoon, as throughout the fourth round, the Detroit Lions were not expected to have a selection. They weren't expected to pick on day 3 until the middle of the 5th round, all the way down at pick 165. But as the 4th round continued, as some players started to go off the board, Brad Holmes decided that was the time he was going to strike. He was going to move up for his guy, and they had a target they brought in for a top 30 visit, a target that they loved to watch on tape, and a prospect that they needed to have. And that prospect, of course, was Giovanni Manu, as the Detroit Lions gave up a 3rd round selection in the 2025 NFL Draft to get the 126th overall pick in 2024 to take Giovanni Manu off the board once and for all. Now, Giovanni Manu is a foreign prospect. Playing at British Columbia last year in Canada, there's not a whole lot of tape on Giovanni Manu, and there's not a whole lot to be known about this prospect from Canada. Now, what I do know is that Giovanni Manu was part of a great offense at British Columbia. He was part of a great offensive unit that led Canadian football in multiple offensive statistical categories, as well as the fact that he was brought in for over a dozen top 30 visits across the NFL. He visited with nearly a third of the NFL franchises, so there was very clearly some buzz about him. There was very clearly some stuff to like, and there was very clearly some interest in the 6'8" offensive lineman. Now, Giovanni Manu stands at 6'8", 350 pounds. He is a mountain of an offensive lineman, and I think he's going to project really well to the NFL from a measurable standpoint. He has an 8.84 RAS score, meaning he ranked as one of the higher offensive guard/tackles to ever athletically test at the NFL Combine and for an athletic pro day. He graded in, of course, with elite size being that big, but also with great grades in speed and explosiveness. Taking a look at his RAS score overall, you're going to find that Giovanni Manu graded out again as an 8.84 RAS score, running a 5.06 40-yard dash at 352 pounds, put up 23 reps on the bench press, which isn't great, but isn't awful, had a 33.5-inch vert, which ranked in the 97th percentile for offensive linemen, as well as an 8.11 broad jump, which ranked in the 73rd percentile. So not bad, but certainly not bad, but certainly not elite. His 20-yard split ranked in the 95th percentile. His 40-yard dash, again, being a 5.06 at that size, is phenomenal. He is a fantastic ball of clay prospect. And we have used that term before to talk about guys that aren't going to play day one, that aren't ready to go right away, but guys that if everything does go right, if you can put the tools with the right coaching and you can kind of polish off some of the rougher edges, this is a guy that we're talking about that could potentially be a Pro Bowl player in the 4th round of the NFL Draft. Now, that's not to say that Giovanni does not have his issues. Giovanni Manu was the 19th offensive tackle selected in the 2024 NFL Draft. There were 7 offensive tackles taken in the 1st round, and there were 10 more selected between rounds 2 and 3. Giovanni Manu, I believe, was the first tackle taken on night 3 of the NFL Draft, but that still left him being the 19th player at his position selected and the 30th overall player selected along the offensive line. Now, despite Giovanni Manu going a little bit later in the draft, his statistics match up really well with just about any other prospect in this class, allowing just 1 sack and 3 pressures and over 212 pass blocking snaps last year with the Thunderbirds. He was pretty much flawless. There wasn't too many times where you saw him getting beat, which is good considering he was playing against competition that he should have been dominating. But the good news about that is he was dominating that competition. Now, again, it's really hard to find statistics about Canadian football. It's really hard to find British Columbia offensive line stats. But what I do have is overall offensive stats for the entire team, in which that Giovanni Manu, of course, was the leader of that offensive line. And with the Thunderbirds last year, the University of British Columbia averaged 33.9 points per game, which was number one in the Canada West. They had 2,500 passing yards, which again was number one in their conference. They rushed for 1,371 yards, which was number two in their conference. They averaged 484 yards per game, which was number one in their conference and would have ranked number three in the NCAA a season ago. And again, he allowed just 3 quarterback pressures and 1 sack on over 502 snaps, 212 of those being pass blocking snaps, meaning in 1 of every 42 and a half pass blocking snaps, he allowed a pressure, which is really, really good. Now, despite him being drafted and announced as a tackle, it seems as though Giovanni Manu will be making his start and will be making a little bit of an impact at the guard position early on, which I think is the right move for the Detroit Lions. As we talked about earlier, Giovanni Manu has the size, the strength, the power, and the speed to be an offensive lineman at the NFL. But one thing we really didn't talk about was his agility, his ability to change direction really quickly, where he graded out really, honestly, quite poorly. He graded out as a bad agility score on his RAS score, which is what really brought him down from being a top-tier athlete at the position, wearing a 4.81 shuttle, ranking in the 47th percentile, and a 3-cone drill of 8.29, putting him in just the 12th percentile for offensive linemen. He is not agile. He does not change directions very fast, but I think that's pretty understandable, again, considering he is 6'8", 352 pounds. Once he gets rolling, you are not going to stop him. He is not going to stop himself and change directions, but the offensive side of the ball, or the defensive side of the ball, is not going to stop him either. As of right now, he is projected to be a right guard on the Detroit Lions. That is where they have him on the official active roster, and that is where he will likely play for a majority of the preseason. And again, I think that really helps play to Manu's strengths. His speed, his power, his strength, his size are all things that could really contribute to the offensive interior of the line, especially considering guys like Kevin Zeitler and Graham Glasgow are growing older by the day. They're going to need to replace their interior a lot sooner than they're going to have to replace their exterior of the offensive line. And if they can polish off Giovanni Manu a little bit, he can be a Pro Bowl caliber guard. His real pro comp for people that really don't know, is going to be Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata, again, another foreign player that was drafted in the 7th round by the Philadelphia Eagles in 2018, also measured in at 6'8" at the NFL Combine. He measured in a little bit heavier with 365 pounds, but Manu and him are very similarly sized and very similar when it comes to RAS score. Jordan Mailata finished with a 8.61 RAS score, again, measuring in with elite size, but having a slower 40, having a less explosive vert, as well as not even testing in the broad jump. And while his 3-cone drill was just a little bit better, it was not significantly better to the point where you would think it was a massive difference, right? Jordan Mailata's 3-cone was an 8.03, whereas Giovanni Manu's was an 8.29. Their shuttle times were a little bit different, a 4.67 for Mailata as opposed to a 4.81 for Giovanni Manu. So he is a little bit more agile, but he is a little bit less fast. He is a little bit less explosive, meaning that Giovanni Manu has the potential to be a Pro Bowl caliber guard. Now, I'm not going to say that he will be a Pro Bowl caliber guard. I'm not going to say that he's going to be Giovanni, or that Giovanni Manu is going to be Jordan Mailata. But what I will say is that they are very similarly sized, right? They're both 6'8", both right around that 350-pound threshold. I will say that Giovanni Manu has just about the same arm length as a guy like Jordan Mailata. So they're the same build, they're the same size, with the same athletic testing, with the same strengths and the same weaknesses. And I think if you give Giovanni Manu to a really, really good offensive line coach, you can develop him in a year and a half to become the offensive guard and the offensive player that Jordan Mailata is right now for the Philadelphia Eagles. And it just so happens that the Detroit Lions have an elite offensive line coach when it comes to Hank Fairley, who developed Penei Sewell, who developed Frank Ragnow, who developed Taylor Decker, who developed Jonah Jackson, who had Coyote Owasco ready for the NFC Championship game, who has constructed this fantastic offensive lineup for the Detroit Lions. He's the architect of that great wall. And I do think that he will do wonders with Jordan Mailata under his wings. He's going to learn from Kevin Zeitler. He's going to learn from Graham Glasgow. He's going to learn under one of the best offensive lines in football. And I think come year 2, when Kevin Zeitler eventually leaves the Detroit Lions, this is the plug and play starter for year 2. And it is going to be a fantastic thing to watch. With all of that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. That is my prospect breakdown of the newest offensive lineman for the Detroit Lions, Giovanni Manu, the Mountain, joining the Detroit Lions offensive line, likely plugging into Penei Sewell next season and having a potential long-term starting guard on the interior. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Let me know how you grade the pick down in the comments below. Very curious what you guys have to say. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.